Alright guys, in this tutorial we are going to look at different ways to do color correcting in Premiere. So from what I've learned so far, the Lumetri color panel right here and the Lumetri color or the Lumetri scopes is what you're going to want to be using to do color correcting. So when you're in Premiere, if you go through the tabs up here at the top and eventually get to color, that's what's going to allow you to do a lot of these, or allow you to use a lot of these charts that show you some important information. So these three charts are really useful. This bottom one right here that shows this chart of, different waveforms from 0 to 100, that essentially is showing you your exposure. So when you upload a camera shot like I did and then drag it over to the main workspace right here, you can go into the Lumetri Scopes panel and then hit Control click and pull up the in this area you can select all the ones that you want to view at a time. So instead of viewing one, you can click which of the several ones you want to be using. So you want to click on waveform type and hit Luma. So Luma is just going to show you your different ranges of shadows and highlights, which is this chart right here. So if the chart ranges all the way to 0 and all the way to 100, you do kind of have a good range of values, but I can see that in my shot, it doesn't quite reach 100 in this video clip right here. So later on in the editing, we're going to want to raise that. This chart right here is your RGB values. So this is the RGB parade chart. And that is going to show you your different channels of color. And I can see here that we have a lot of colors in the red channel and kind of less in the blue channel. So we'll be able to equal those out to get a more color balanced video clip soon. And then this panel right here shows you your hue, luminosity, and saturation within the colors. So I can kind of tell that since it's only ranging to half of this chart right here, that we don't really have a balanced camera shot. Alright, so let's begin. Most of what you need for a lot of your color correcting you can find in the Lumetri color panel right here. Oh, here we go. Lumetri color, and in the basic correction tab. So for example, let's try and deal with this range of shadows and highlights. What is kind of a good rule of thumb is you're looking for your full range of values. So you kind of want to, in our case, we'll increase, here, let me reset that. Oh, it is reset. For a second I thought that was already edited. So we're going to want to raise the white values. As you can see, they're now starting to reach the top, which is a good sign. So it's getting a little bit brighter, and the shadows are pretty good. It looks like they're reaching 0, which is the bottom, but we can pull them down even a little further. A good rule of thumb is in the dark parts of the image, you want to see the slightest trace of your full black value. Okay, automatically saved, cool. You want your full trace, or you want to see a trace of your darkest dark, but you don't want that to overpower that shadow. So if I were to drag the black value all the way down, you can see that you're losing a lot of information right here, and it's kind of going below the 0 over here. So we want to be just above that so that it kind of hits that dark value, but you can still see some information in the shadow. So that looks a little gray. That's where we started. So we started pretty close. Honestly, I'm just going to leave it at 2, -2. And then let's see what it looks like if we crank this up further. Getting brighter, getting brighter, getting brighter, but the grass right here is getting a little too bright. It's kind of looking sharp, almost washed out in a way. So I think I'm going to raise it just so that the highlights hit the top of the chart right here. And we haven't even messed around exposure, which we can do. So for example, as we pull it down, this chart is kind of not reaching its full value. So it might be in our best interest to leave the exposure for now. And I guess there's so much you can do to get to the same end point. In the end, it's totally up to you and what your style is. Like, you could reach this point that we reached using whites and blacks by doing just highlights and shadows too, and not really messing around with the whites and blacks. See, I kind of like that. I'm gonna pull the shadows down a bit because it gives more of a range of value in this log right here. Let's see. I'm not going to raise the highlights too much, maybe even pull them down. See, I don't really notice all that much by pulling the highlights down below 0, which is a good sign that it's kind of a really bright, washed out video clip. So I'm going to pull it just below 0. Let's mess around with contrast. So less contrast, more contrast. Everybody loves contrast, but I'm just going to leave it where it is for now. So we can also boost the color using just saturation. That's kind of doing a good job of boosting the color, but it's a little too much for me. So what I'm thinking we should do is take this white balance selector and find the brightest point, excuse me, I hope you're already recording. Anyways, I'm just going to keep rolling with it and hoping that this has been recording. That would suck if it hasn't. So I'm looking for the whitest white in this image, although I actually don't really see that besides this tiny blip in the corner. So if I click on that, that is going to become the new full white value and color correct or white balance the rest of the image for us. So it kind of cooled it down a little bit, which, you know, not bad. I can see it pulled the temperature down a bit and gave it a little bit of magenta, but I think I'm going to change the tint to a little more green instead of magenta to kind of let that grass pop instead. And trying to think. Do we want it cool? Do we want it warm? Let's see what it looks like warm. See, I kind of like a little bit of warmth. That's not so bad. Let's see. Now the grass is getting that kind of yellow hue from the orange, which is matching the orange of the leaves, and it feels a little more like fall. Oh, see, with some magenta, that looks more like some late evening fall lighting. That's not so bad. So I think I'm gonna ignore the white balance and do a little bit of magenta and a little bit of orange, because that feels more like fall to me. And let's pop the saturation just a little bit for S's and G's. Alright. Not bad. And now the last part that I'll share is how to keep your color correction consistent. So I hope this saves. I think it saved the settings. What we can do now is I have the second video clip of some running water, but we want the color correction we did in this video clip to match the colors of the next clip. So we're going to do control-click on the first clip we edited, copy, go to the second clip, and paste attributes. And that is going to, yeah, you want Lumetri color selected so that it's copying the color to the next video. And now I can see that it added a little more magenta, but what's going to make this a lot easier for our purposes is if we go to comparison view, which I believe is in the color wheels and match, yeah. See, now it's showing us these clips side by side. And what's really cool is it's showing us the lighting side by side, the difference in exposures. Now, this clip, the water image that we're introducing is way darker than this really bright image. So this is going to be a beast to color correct, and I'm not looking forward to it. I chose really bad images to try and make look alike. But let's see what we can do. So even though we copied and pasted the color correction from the first clip, we still might want to tinker with it at this point. Ooh, that's a little harsh. I kind of don't like bringing up the exposure, even though it is a darker clip, because you can tell that you're in a dark setting and, you know, we don't want to wash out the highlights. So what I'm thinking is let's focus on the colors. Let's add some more natural green hues to this. Yeah. See, now the shadows in the water are starting to match the green and blue hues we're seeing in that log, which I think at least creates a common thread for us. And let's see what happens if we make it more blue. See, that looks very disjointed. We want more of that warm lighting that we have in the previous clip. Man, we can really blow it out with a bunch of orange lighting. This really feels more like a sunset now. Maybe it's a little much, but I kind of like it. And I'm thinking, let's see. The shadows, the whites. What happens if we pull up the whites a bit? Okay, now in this chart over here, I can see that we are brightening up the image a bit by pulling out the whites, which I think is a good idea for consistency's sake. And let's pull down the shadows just a bit to get more of a value range. It's a little contrasty though, so I'm gonna pull that down so that it's a little easier on the eyes. Highlights are a little strong. Alright, so now these are a little more related, still a little disjointed because I chose some bad clips to try and color correct together, but that's the general gist. You can do so much with just the basic settings in the Lumetri color panel, and it's very helpful to look at these charts and try and get the information to match. In this case, because this second clip is so much darker, it's not going to match the first one so well, but we did mess around with the colors a bit, and I think that that made them a little closer related. So I'm going to stop the video right there because I think that most of what you need for your basic color correcting is found with these Lumetri color panels and by looking at these charts. So I hope that this was somewhat helpful and hope you guys enjoy. Let's see.